Well, hello, and welcome back. For those of you that are joining in on the live stream, if you check the link in the description, you can head on over to YouTube and you will see that you have the opportunity to comment. I'm not checking everywhere. For those of you that are not actually watching live, I want to let you know that you can probably check the link in the description to see the edited version of this, which will have any of the goofos or long pauses or awkwardnesses stripped out. And with that out of the way, we'll go ahead and get started. Well, hello, and welcome back. Tonight, we're going to talk about being able to use Stack Overflow driven development to find actual solutions to problems. So what I mean by that is up until this point, we followed a fairly learn things as we go approach where I try to explain what I'm doing and why. There are some problems for which it's just not worth learning the explanation. And we're going to investigate one of those tonight, and we're going to use Stack Overflow to solve it. So go ahead and open up your notes. Go to gist.github.com, add yourself a new section to your Beyond Code notes. Just hit the edit button and you can add a file and go along, and then we'll bring this into the blog, of course, as well. Now, the thing that's missing from this, and if at any moment, if at any time you have that aha moment while you're watching, please go ahead and give this a like, and you can subscribe if you want to. But anyway, the thing that's missing from our blog, and let me go ahead and make this nice and big, is that we now have the articles themselves, we have the titles. But what every blog article needs, absolutely, is a date. We want to know the date that the article was created and the date that it was last updated. You will find as a developer that it drives you insane when you go to look for an article on how to do something, you find it, and you can't tell whether this is for the version that was released last year or the one that was released last month or 5 years ago. And so we always want to have dates on our blog. Now, thankfully, as you may have noticed before, actually, I'm in the wrong terminal here. There we go. Now I'm back on this one. So when we were talking about Git, and it's a database, it logs the file times of all the files. So if I do Git Log, we can see in here that it gives a date for the commit. So what we can actually do, if we want to look at Git log and then give it a particular file, let's give it how domains work, we can see the date that the blog article was added to Git, and we can see the last date that it was updated. The thing is, we need that date in a friendly format that we can use for our blog here. And there's a couple of problems with this. So I want to just take a second to talk about these. One of them is that every operating system between Mac, Linux, Windows, other different Unixes, because there's about 20 different variations of Unix besides Mac and Linux, their file systems can treat files differently. So ideally, if we just looked at a file, so I'll go ahead and use LL to look at our files here. Ideally, we would get a timestamp that means something really, really useful. But it turns out that quite often we don't, because Mac does it differently, Windows does it differently, Linux does it differently. And if we're going to create a system that, especially something that we want to be able to share with others, which is what one of the things we're leading up to with this is you having code that you can share and explain to others, you want to have something that works consistently everywhere. So the way that LL or LS will produce dates is actually not consistent. There's a modified time, there's a change time, which is also known as the inode time, there's an access time, and there's a birth time. And the way that they change between operating systems is different. But Git, it gives us this nice list. There's also a program called stat, but it works differently between Unix like Mac and Unix like Linux. And then there's another program called, I'm trying to remember. There's another program that we can use to get dates, and there's also a date command. And then this is actually different between Unixes that are like Mac and Unixes that are like Linux. So we can't rely on the date command or the stat command to give us accurate file timestamps. So we have to resort to get. But then we have to somehow extract this date and put it in a meaningful way. And so that's where we're a little bit stuck. So what I'm going to suggest, for simplicity's sake, is the date format that we would want to use is year, month, day, and then a time that is possibly in local time or possibly in UTC time. UTC time is the main time that people rely on, but sometimes it's nice to have things in local time if you can designate it. But let's say that it's UTC time. So the time would be in military format or 24-hour format. So we might have something like this. Or we maybe don't even need the time at all. Let's forego the time. The time's not that important. What's important is the date. We need a relative scale of, is this days old, months old, years old, decades old? Okay, so we need a date that looks like this. So the question becomes, how could we get Git Log to give us a date in a proper format? Because even if we were to use some fancy tools, like I'm just going to show you some magic real quick. We kind of covered this a little bit the other day, but if I were to use ripgrep and then I was to look for the string date, okay, that gives me back all the dates, and then I could use the cut tool that we used before with the D option for delimiter, and I could say give me let's say that space is the delimiter, and I could say give me the fields, I don't know, what is this, 4 through 8? Ha! Nailed it. What are the odds? Pretty even, I'd say. Anyway, so even here, this is not necessarily the format that we want, and we could do some fidgety bibbity, but it'd be nice if we could just get, like, we don't want to convert March to we definitely don't want to try to convert something like March into a number in Bash. This would be terrible. It's a bad idea. Bash has limitations. It's very good for running commands and piping them together and doing text manipulation. Very bad for doing programming in the true sense. So anyway, yeah, we're going to try to figure out if we can get the log to go out in that format. And the reason that we want that format in particular is it's going to make our job easier because we're building this in Bash. And another command that I haven't taught you about yet, but I'll go ahead and introduce you to right now, is a command called sort. Oh, where'd my, oh, all the way over there, huh? Okay, let me bring this back. Excuse me just a moment while I adjust this. We'll go with it. Okay, so there's a command called sort that will sort items, and we can tell it to sort numerically. And so here, -n for sort numerically as opposed to alphabetically, in which case 0 comes after Z or some such, and 0, 1, and 1, 0. Anyway, there's a difference between lexical sorting, meaning alphabetical sorting, and numerical sorting. So we do numerical sorting, and this looks good, but it's wrong, because we would want it to be sorted by year and then month and then day, and so we can't get any reasonable sort out of this. So that's kind of the problem. So what we're going to do is we're going to search for Git Log date format, and I'm gonna cheat a little bit. I've already cheated a little bit because I told you some commands that won't work, and the reason they won't work is because they're different. We can't expect the behavior to be reliable. And here there's two formats of time. One's called RFC. It's referred to in shorthand as RFC, and the other in shorthand is referred to as ISO. So what we want is to get the date format either as ISO or as RFC, because that's pretty easy to work with. So you'll notice just about every time you do one of these programming searches, StackOverflow is going to be it's going to be on the front page, absolutely certain. It's probably going to be one of the top hits. So I'm going to Git Log date format ISO. And that's the format we talked about, where it's year, month, day. And RFC is the same. It's slightly different. And there's actually some numbers that go with those, but for shorthand, people just call them ISO. Yeah, see, you can see here, let me make that bigger for you. ISO 8601, that's the number for that. And the RFC is 3339. Don't ask me why I've memorized that. But we want to be able to get dates in that format. Ooh, and there's actual Git documentation. This could be up to date. So I did already find this answer. I know that the answer is out there. So we're not going on a wild duck chase, but I do want to actually go through the process of kind of sifting through so that you can see what this is like and what our goal is. Okay, so some dude's asking the question, or dudette is asking the question, how do I get the local date? Actually, I think this was the one that ended up being the answer. So we might have gotten lucky. I got the right search terms on the first try. Let me see here. So I generally just skim these because usually in the question, there's not useful information. It'll just confuse you. You want to kind of look to see what they want to do. But usually they're either showing you something that they've made up. They're saying, for example, I would expect to be able to run a command that looks like this and get a result that looks like this. Or they're obviously wrong, which is why they're asking the question. I tried this, it didn't work. So we just kind of want to skim through and see if we see times in the way that we want them. Okay, there we are. This actually looks pretty good. This person may, in fact, have gotten exactly what we wanted. So I might be wrong here in the question. I think what they wanted to do was to not, let's go read. Date local shows dates in my user's time zone. Only takes effects for dates in human readable format, but with ISO format, it does not take effect. As a matter of fact, date. Okay, yeah. So, but this question, look at this. This is 5 years old, okay? So there's probably a better way to do this. In fact, if I remember correctly, this is the one I came across. There is a way to do this. So here it says, oh, also 5 years ago, but later in the year with Git 2.7, which just came out, there's a dash local. So we might want this. We might try. I kind of like the idea of including the time zone. You know what? Let's not waste time on it. We just need the date. That's all we really need. We need the date and we need the file name because we need to be able to sort and then grab the file name, and we need to be able to create our list in that way. So let's see, is this, okay, so we've got, I wish we could find the documentation for pretty format. Let me scroll down here and see what else we get if somebody else has another way that they're doing this. So date equals ISO local, pretty format equals, there's commit date, and then I think there's another date, but CD in this case, I just know this because I've been around the block. This is not something you need to memorize. But I just know this because I've dealt with these date things before. And then %H, and this is completely custom to Git. You'll never see this format, that you'll see styles of syntax like this, but this is completely not reusable. This is not a convention. This is not a standard anybody follows, just so you know. %H, I can derive just from looking at it that we see some random nonsense here, and we see the %H there. I can understand that %H obviously means hash because like I said before, the hashes are generally abbreviated to 7 characters. That looked about 7 characters, etc. Okay, so I'm going to look through here, see if we got any more good information. Let's see, abbrev commits. I wonder, I'm just going to try something here. I'm going to try to get the format in with the file name, because you'll see why we need this in a minute. I'm going to try let's get rid of the H and put in an F instead. I'm just going to guess F could be file name. Well, close. That gives us the commit name. Let's try N. Nope, that doesn't give us anything good. Let's try FN. No, let's try. Oh, you know why? I know what we need to do. I know what we need to do here. We're actually going to have to use some of our Git Log foo skills. So what we're going to do, we've done a loop before. We're going to do a loop again. So I'm actually going to get out of fish here, and I'm going to go into bash so that we can practice our loop with bash syntax. So if you remember, loops, we do for x and y for each, we're saying for each of these things do some task. So for, we'll call this my article, we'll call it my file in source star.md do, and then we want to git log specifically that file. So we're not seeing everything, we're just seeing that file. So I will put in my file, whoops, make sure I get the curlies in there. And then, yeah, let's say done. Okay, cool. So that worked. It spit out too much information, but this is okay. Now let's see if we can get it to print out just the date. So I'm just going to start copying one line at a time until we get it right. Let's see what happens. Okay, ISO local. Ah, actually that's quite nice all on its own. You know, I think we could kind of stop right here and just use grep at this point. You know, if I, just like I did with RG, now that we're in bash, I'm going to use grep date. I mean, could work, but let's stay the course on this one. So what's the next thing in here? -3. I don't know what that -3 is about. Let's try it out. No, let's not, because it's not actually going to work in this situation. I know what it's about. This is the number of commits that it will show. So what we could do is we could put a -1, and then we're going to get, I think this will be just the most recent. You know what we need to print out? Hold on. We need to also print out, with this, we need to print out my file as well. So I'm going to do printf, give it a string. So %s, this is very common. What printf does, this is common across multiple languages. So that is worth learning. And then I'm going to give it my file. And then we're not putting a new line here. I'm going to put a space. Okay, that's going to work. And then we're going to do git log. This isn't quite what I want to do, but it's going to help us debug right now. So this is good. All right, what did we get here? That didn't look quite right to me. My file do printf. No, all right. What is going on? Let me just comment this. Let's just echo to comment that out for a second. All right, so we do get the file name there, and we get all that. So for some reason, we're not getting the file name. Looks like it's getting eaten. So what we need to do then is stay the course. Now let's copy this pretty bit here. So I'm going to Command K to clean up my screen a little bit. Whoops. Unfortunately, that, oh no. I'm just going to have to press enter, I guess. There we go. Okay. So let us add in this pretty bit. I think, and I got to close it with the right kind of quote. Now I think that if we do this, that should give us our commit date. I think we actually want the author date, which is AD. Whoops, I don't want to echo here. Let me get rid of that echo because we want to actually run this. Okay, that's almost looking right. Almost. Something's a little off there. Let me try this. Okay, so this is a little bit weird. It's actually possible for a command to delete what was printed to the screen. So what we were seeing is we're printing the file name, and then we're running Git. Git is actually deleting everything that came before it. We're zooming the cursor back to the beginning and then printing out again, rather than starting the cursor from where it was left off. Don't worry too much about that. One of those things you'll learn as you go. But here we are. So what I'm just trying to see is how many of these do we have per file? Right now we just have one. Okay. So this looks like we want to figure out, are we looking at the latest one or are we looking at the oldest one? Because for right now, I just want to go with I think the most recent one. All right, let's look at how domains work up here. Was printed with 27. When we take away the -1, we get the 26 as well. Okay. All right, all right. Okay, cool. So I think what we want to do is we actually now let's put this in a script, because this is really hard to read. So we're going to go ahead and put this in a script. I'm going to open this up. We'll call this getdates.sh. If only it were that easy. Sudo getdates. All right, here we go. Now this should look a little less scary in a moment. A little bit. Oh, and I didn't talk about the parentheses yet. Let me take a second to do that. So you can actually put multiple lines together if you put what did I say? Semicolons. I think I said parentheses. I meant semicolons. If you put a semicolon, you can actually string multiple lines together. Don't do this. Don't do this. I do it sometimes when I'm debugging interactively in the interactive shell. But, generally speaking, we don't want to do this. So right now, all we want to do is print the file name. We'll actually do an extra one of these too. We just want to print the file name. We're going to print the most recent date with -1 gives us only the most recent date. And then if we use this other Git Log command, it's going to give us more. It's going to give us all the dates. So what we can do, just like we used tail yesterday or whenever it was Saturday, we can use, or we used head. We can also use the command tail, and I'm going to do -n1 to say give me just the last one. So let's break this down real quick. For loop, nothing too scary here. Just for variable name. So we're calling the variable myFile in each of all of the items that match source star.md. So for each MD file in that directory, we're going to print out what the file's name is. Then we're going to get, with this -1, we're just going to get one entry from the log, the most recent entry from the log. And then we're going to format the date of that entry that matches that file. So when you do Git Log in general, it gives you all the history. When you do Git Log and you end with a file name, it gives you just the history for that file. So the -1 means give us only the most recent entry. And then we tell it we want the date in this format. And we say we don't want you to print out with the name and the author and all those things. We just want you to print out the author date. So very similar to what we did here, except I happen to know that AD meant author date, and this is not something you generally know unless you look into this. And this itself, again, this is not necessarily a useful skill in terms of on the job, you're going to need to know this. This is just, I'm showing you how we can take something that we find, twiddle some bits, look at it different ways, try it piece by piece, and mangle it to work for us. So here we are. Oh, what format do you want the date to be? Okay, this. Sorry, I didn't see that question earlier. I don't know if you're still watching here. But yeah, we want it to be in the ISO format. Okay.
So we're going to now get a list of all the dates, which could be actually kind of expensive, but for reasons that you'd find out if you went through and read multiple of these posts, there's not an easy way to do a reverse search and get the correct date. There is a way to do a reverse search of the Git log, but it turns out that when you mix certain options together, it essentially gets ignored. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to print out all of the dates, and then we're only going to pick the very last one. So we get the very first one, the most recent one, the very last one. And then we're going to print ourselves a new line. So if we're lucky, what we'll see is, let's go ahead, I'll do a little printf here. So this is updated at, and then this one is created at. There we are. Let's go ahead and run it. See what we got. Okay, how to use Git. Updated at, like updated at and created at are the same on this. That's great. In fact, that's the way it is on most of these, but I imagine if we go up to how domains work, that article's been edited multiple times. Excellent. As how to create a server has been. So this is great. We get the most recent date. We get the next date. And like I said before, what we're going to do for simplicity's sake right now, and you can take it as an exercise to do a little bit more with this, we're going to use the cut tool, and we're going to split this with spaces. We're going to delimit with spaces, and then we're going to grab just the year, month, day. And then we're going to use that to actually to be able to sort our list of articles. If we're lucky, we'll see. Might not get quite that far actually. But the first thing we want to do is store this. So how do we capture output? We talked about subshells. So I just wrapped this in a subshell. That's all I did. And then I'm going to assign it to a variable. So we're going to call this my updated equals. And then we're going to go ahead and we'll bring that around later. Yeah, we will. I'm going to get rid of that for the second. Bring that back down here. And then we're going to do, similarly, we're going to do my created. Let me get rid of that. So we'll do my created equals. So now we're capturing the output. We're storing it in a variable. Let's go ahead and print those variables out. So we will, this is going to be interesting. And we're going to fit this whole thing in a subshell to sort it. That's where this is going to be cray-cray. For sure. So I think we're going to end up replacing the array that we had, or the for loop that we had before. We're going to end up replacing it with this. But we're going to put the whole thing in a subshell so we can capture the output, so that we can sort it, so that we can have our blog articles be in the date order rather than by whatever random order they happen to be on the file system. So this is going to be fun. So let's say we want to have the created at date first, and then we want to have the updated date next, and then we want to have the file name last. So it'll be like this. We'll do my created, my updated, and my file. Let's go ahead and test this and see what it looks like. All right, the only problem here is we got too much information, so we're going to trim some of that information out using cut. So we know, let me go back actually. So you see how this is all together, then there's a space. This is all together, then there's a space. This is together, then there's a space, so on and so forth. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut just the first field. So So we're going to delimit by spaces and cut the first field using the cut command. So let me go back here. I'm going to do cut -D, and we're going to use space, and we're going to use F1. So let's just test that. I'm going to save it. We're going to run it again. Clear my screen here, Command K. All right, so now what do I get? This and this. Okay, so we're putting created at first and what I cut was updated at. That's fine, but it's working. I'm going to reorder that in the file here just so it makes a little bit more logical sense with what we're doing. So here we go. Now it's created at, updated at. I just changed the order of the variables so it reads easier for us. And then we want to put the cut on created at as well. So cut -D space F1. All right, we'll take a look again. And there we are. It's looking good. Okay. Now, this will be a little tricksy. Oh. Sorry about that. It's time to take the trash out. So if we just run this and we do a sort on it, -in, so it does a numerical sort, everything comes in order, but we don't have enough differentiator. You know what? I'm actually going to have to get rid of the cut on the created at. We might do F2 on that. Let's try it out. Okay. Oh, whoops. Let me go back. It needs to be F1 through 2. There we go. There we are. Let me run that one more time. Okay, so now it's picking up the date there. This is what I'm concerned about. We're really pushing the limits of Bash, so we're not going to do too much more in Bash with this blog. We're almost done with what we're going to do because Bash is meant for simple tasks, and we're getting to the point where we're trying to compare dates and stuff like that. We're using some hackery. We're like, okay, we'll format the date in a particular way, then we'll be able to use the sort command. But we are kind of pushing the limits here because things start to fall apart. So for example, we could use cut with a known number of characters. That's what we're going to have to do. Because what we can't guarantee is we don't know whether or not there's going to be a space in the file name. So if we were to use cut on spaces after we've sorted this and then try to get back the file name a second time, what would end up happening is we would potentially split the file name and mess it up. So instead, we're going to have to count the number of characters. So we got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. Okay, we'll find out if this is right because I could have counted wrong in my haste. So what we're going to do next is we're going to run through cut. We're going to give the -D as a space. No, sorry. We're going to use -C for just cut continuously. And we're going to say start from 31 on. What do we get? Okay, so it's actually 32. I was just off by 1. Common problem when doing programming. But this is good. It's a little fragile, but it's going to work. So here's what we're going to do then. We're going to take this. We're going to put that whole thing in a subshell. All right. Get dates. We're going to put the whole thing in a subshell. It's amazing. After all this time, I still have to look down to make sure I've got the $sign in the right place. All right. I don't know if this is going to work. This will be interesting. But let's try it. So my articles equals, put the whole thing in a subshell. And then let's do put our variable here and see what we get. We're going to run that now. Holy moly, I don't believe it. It worked. Yay! Okay, let's try that one more time. So I think what's happening here is it's just, I think because there's an extra character, we're getting an empty line. I'm going to widen this out for a second. I'll take it back. Yeah, that's what it was. Okay, cool. So that amazingly, that putting all that in a subshell, as insane as it is, that worked. So now here's the next thing we're gonna do. That's crazy. Now that we've got the list sorted, we're gonna go back through it again. We're gonna do for my article in my articles do done, and we're going to have to pull out that information. So if I remember correctly, we're going to cut 32 to get the file name. So my file is going to be, and we're going to do a subshell here, and we're going to use printf %string my article. So what we're doing is we're getting this to put out a string. So if we did nothing else, my file would be exactly equal to my article with this, because we're just saying, hey, printf, print this out. But we're printing it out so that we can then put it in a pipe to cut to do -c 32 onward. So then we'll do again right here. Oh, that percent sign's killing me. Percent, and then we'll do my file. Oops. There we go. So the hope is that there shouldn't actually be any difference between what it was just a moment ago and now. Other than that, it's being put through the second loop. Oh, and we're just grabbing the file name. Great, this looks perfect. This looks absolutely perfect. So now we're going to get the created date again, because we got the whole string. We're going to cut to the known length to get the created date. Okay, so my created is equal to my article, but it's going to be, we're going to start at 0, and we're going to go through 4, 5, takes us through the year, plus another 3, that's 8, takes us through the month, plus another 3, that's 11, takes us through the day. So now we should have, again, the created at, and this is all so that we can end up with this in our list. So we'll go back and update our other file momentarily, our build script, and we're gonna put this monstrosity in there. Okay, so we're gonna do bash get dates. Oh, may not include 0. Okay, sorry, I did that. You didn't get a chance to read that. I read it too fast. But it says a list value cannot include 0. So apparently, I did not realize this, cut is 1 indexed, not 0 indexed. So let's try this again. This may or may not work out, which I think that means that this goes to 10. I'm not sure. We'll find out in just a second. Okay, so, oh, that's working out way differently than what I expected here. But that does seem to capture the whole date. So maybe what we need to do, I think what's happening here is because I have it in quotes, I think I need to take it out of quotes, because I think it's treating everything as one line because I had it in quotes. So I'll take it out of quotes and see, because I think what it was doing was it was printing out each of the dates. No, I don't. Let's try this. Okay, that's definitely not right. Definitely not right. Okay, let's try this one more time. We're going to put a dot on either side of this just so we can see how it's printing. I'm going to get rid of the my created. And we're just going to look and see what we get here. Ah, okay. So it is treating all of this as one. I'm actually going to have to do some more Stack Overflow driven development here, because this is not we're doing kind of a weird thing. But it's good to learn at every age. So bash for string new lines. So we're doing bash, we want a for loop, we want a for over a string, we want a for over by new line. So I just put in the keywords. How to loop through a list of strings. That looks like that might be what we want to do. Okay. How do we tell it? I got another idea, actually. We're going to do something else. This is the way I would have normally done it if I wasn't just thinking about the for loop. What I would do, actually, is I would say, let's do printf articles. We're going to pipe that to a command called while read my article. And then I think this is going to have the expected behavior. I think that that's what we have to do. Let's check it out. Oh, and I wasn't putting quotes around this. That also could have thrown off some of the results, but I don't think that it hurt in this particular case. Okay, we're going to try this again. Run through. All right, that looks right. So we got the dot before and we got the dot after, which means that each one of these is being handled appropriately. Okay, so lesson learned. For is really just for strings that can be delimited by any white space, whether it's a space or a new line or anything. While read will cause it to break it up by new lines, not by spaces. That's essentially what we did here. And I'm sorry I didn't go the full Stack Overflow route to find somebody's example where they show that. I just remembered it. But here we go. So while read is kind of like for, but like I said, works on strings more so than working on files. And we're still giving it a variable. So we're saying while read my article, that's the variable, then do this stuff. All right, so we've got that. We're almost ready here. I'm going to go ahead and take this variable and put it back in. And the $sign gets me too, apparently. Man, I got to get better at this. I'm going to lose my programming chip. And then we're going to do updated as well. But updated doesn't exist yet. That's okay. My updated, we will do the updated. Updated is going to start at not 11, because that would be the empty space. It's going to start at 12. And then it's going to go plus 9. That should take us to 21. So that should give us the updated date. So let's just go ahead and take a look at this. Does it look right? Oh, no. That is giving us the time because we have the time appended in there. So we need to skip past the time, which is going to take us, I think, to 19. And then we need to add 9. That should take us to 28. I'm just doing quick math based on the number of characters in the string because we already went through this before. So that is right there. That's 6 and this is 8. So I might have been off by 1 again because I think I tried 9, but we'll see. Okay, so I'm a little shy. I'm not aggressive enough on this side, but if I were, then I'd be correct. So I need to advance by 2. So this should be 21 to 30. All right, there we are. So we've got our created date, our updated date. These are sorted by time as well. And we're just printing them out in the order we got them. So the next piece is now we're going to replace our loop in the other file with this loop. So I'm just going to comment this out and I'm going to copy this whole thing, which by the way, you can, if you installed Vim GUI, you can just select with the mouse and that copies as well. Whoops. Let me do that again. All right, so we're going to go back to our build, and we are going to blow away our for loop here. I'm pasting in the new loop that we created. And I'm going to get rid of, let's see, my article is base name of my file. So basically, I think I can just get rid of the for loop, and I think we're at the right spot here now, because file is still what it was supposed to be. Base name's still going to work correctly. All we need to do now is go add the date to the part that shows. Let's go back here. So we just need to add the date into the title here, and our question is, where do we want to put it? And I'm going to say, let's put it at the very end. So I'm going to say, let's put a space here. We'll put it in parentheses just for fun. And we'll do my created. And then, actually, let's do it this way. Okay. So once we got that working in its own standalone script, replacing it, we didn't really have to do much because I used the same variable name. I called it my file, which is what I'd called it in the for loop. And so we figured all that stuff out. And then we just pasted in the new stuff and then kind of let it carry on the same as it was before. Everything else is the same. So we're just going to go ahead and run this. And we're going to rsync it. Whoops, let me get out of bash here so I get my auto completion and my colors and everything again. So there we go. Let's go ahead and rsync this over to our website and give it a little refresh. Ba-da-da-da! So I'm not a big fan of the way that this looks. We're going to change this a little bit, and then we're going to call it a night. So let me go in. Oh, there we go. So sorry, it looks particularly bad because these lines are a little bit long, and I'm trying to make the screen big so that you can read. I'm going to make the screen a little bit smaller so that things will actually fit on their line. I need to adjust my linting tool to be more upset about line width, I guess. Okay, so I didn't like putting the created afterwards. It really throws off kind of the feel of the style. So I'm going to put the created date first, and then I'm going to mix in. Am I going to mix in a little HTML? I am going to mix in a little HTML. So there's an HTML tag we can use that has a default behavior of making things smaller called small. Go figure. I'm just going to throw that in there, and then I'm also going to use one called EM, which gives, basically it's italics, but it's called EM for emphasis. But we're going to go ahead and use those. I'm going to build this again. I'm going to sync it over to our web server, and then refresh. I don't think that small did anything. Oh, I know why, though. I know why. Because we're not doing unsafe markdown with ComRack right now. That's okay. I don't want to deal with that. So I'm going to just go ahead and get rid of those things. So when you do markdown, sometimes you're allowed to put certain HTML in, and other times you're not allowed. And you can use options on tools like ComRack so that you do get the ability to put in whatever you want, because I trust the HTML that I'm putting in, so I can tell ComRack run in unsafe mode and let me do whatever I want it, because it's all stuff that I'm writing myself. I'm not taking in untrusted inputs here. It's not somebody else's writing articles and I'm posting them with potentially unsafe things. But anyway, I think this is decent for now. The one other thing that I would love to do with this is I would love to put the date inside of the content of the file itself. So the last thing here, where did our content go? Where's our little find and replace? Oh, there it is, right here. Okay. So I'm going to call this part. And I'm going to do the same thing again. But I'm going to do created at. And we're going to do my created. And then we're going to do part. I'll explain this in just a second. I probably should explain it before. Need to make sure that's in quotes in case the file name has spaces in it or something. And then we'll do this as the final. I call this temp instead of part. That makes more sense, actually. Call it temp1 because we might actually want to do this multiple times in a row. So what I'm going to do is just like we had the content brackets inside of our template, which we'll see again in just a second. And let me get rid of that file once we're done here. Okay, so just like we had content inside, I'm going to add a space for the date, and I'm going to call it created at, and we're just going to roll with it. So it's going to create an intermediary file. What it's going to do is it's going to read the template. It's going to create a temporary file that only has one thing changed. And then we're going to change one other thing, and we're going to write the temporary file into the final file, and then we're going to remove the temporary file. Now this is really inefficient. We're pushing against the limits of what Bash should do. We're getting to the point where this thing should be rewritten in a programming language. There's a little rule. Let's see if we can see how many lines are in this. Okay, we're halfway to the unacceptable limit. If you have a Bash file that is more than 100 lines long, you are definitely doing it wrong. And when it's 50 lines long, you're getting there, but we're having fun. So I'm going to go back into our template file, and we've got our place right here for content. I'm going to create another place, and we're going to call this place created at, and this is going to get replaced with the date. And so I'm just going to put this in. I mean, I guess it could go in there. Yeah, let's go ahead and put it in there. I don't know where else to put it, I guess. It seems like and we'll go ahead and no, we won't do that yet. We won't do that yet. We'll just do created at, and we'll call it good. We'll sync our blog over. How domains work. Oh. Okay, cool. How to create a server. How domains work. What if there we are. Cool. So we've got a date. It's in an awkward place, but it's there. What I'd prefer to have it is to the right of the title. I'm not quite sure what the best method to do that is. I'm going to try one thing, but I don't want to. If it doesn't work right off the bat, then I don't want to deal with it. And this is not something we're going to cover right now. That's fine. I just want to try something out. We haven't talked about styles yet. We haven't really talked about HTML much. We just kind of did copy paste. I'm just going to try something out and see if I can get that to float to the right on the page. There we are. Beautiful. Love it. Love it. This is perfection. This right here. This is it, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. So it was a lot more Bash trial and error than it was Stack Overflow driven development, but we did some Stack Overflow driven development. So I hope that you got something out of that. If you did, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you want to watch these live videos, check the description for the subscribe. If you want the edited videos, check the description there. And with that,
I'd love to know any comments or questions that you have. So leave some comments. If you watch this far, certainly your mind is a little bit, why did you do that that way? Or what the heck did that mean? Because we did jump around a lot. Sorry, nature of the beast for what we're doing here. But anyway, you have the best night ever, and I will